Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Dayamudirayat Nashta Prayesha Bhadrashu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Suttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So this morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 7th Canto, Chapter 10, Prahlada, the best among exalted devotees. And today we're going to end the description of Nrsimha Prahlada Lila with the concluding words of Lord Brahma, and then text 30. I think Lord Nrsimhadev will give his final admonishment to Lord Brahma and disappear. That will be the end of this pastime pretty much. And then Shukadev Goswami will segue into another seemingly unrelated pastime of Lord Shiva destroying the Tripura, the three flying cities of the demons. So we have 5 verses to read today. Verse 7, 10, 25 is on the board. And from what I understand, there is actually I couldn't help but admire the beautiful handwriting of the verse. Whoever wrote it, it's very pleasing to the eyes, isn't it? When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the handwriting of Rupa Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that the handwriting of Rupa Goswami looked like a set of pearls strung on a thread. And if any of you saw the actual handwriting of Rupa Goswami, this is a very apt comparison. A very equally, uniformly formed, very beautiful, and very pleasing to the eyes. I think people of our modern age are out of the habit of handwriting. When I try to write something with hand, I can understand how significantly my handwriting has deteriorated since my school days. I used to have children, school teachers getting in our case for not writing properly. Now people don't care to write, they all type. But whoever wrote this verse is, please accept my gratitude. Srila Prabhupada once said in a lecture, describing the word Uttama Shloka, he oftentimes commented on that word. Uttama Shloka means the Lord who, literally it means that the Lord is glorified, Uttama Shloka, in choicest poetry. And Srila Prabhupada expanded on that word, saying that Krishna, because he is Uttama Shloka, he deserves the best of everything. The best words, the choicest words, the best poetry, and Srimad Bhagavatam is a pinnacle of poetry. There is even a saying among Sanskrit scholars of India that if you want to put your scholarship to test, try reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Then you'll understand what kind of a scholar you are, or you're not. It's very poetic and very exquisite and beautifully composed with deep, profound meanings in every shloka and every syllable. And also Srila Prabhupada said that because the Lord is Uttama Shloka, therefore he should also be glorified with choicest emotions, choicest superior feelings. And by extension, we could also say that the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam deserve to be written in this kind of beautiful handwriting. Even if there are some discrepancies, literary discrepancies or grammatical discrepancies, still it doesn't diminish, it doesn't take away from the beauty and completeness of Srimad Bhagavatam. The reason I'm mentioning that is that there is a typo in today's verse on the blackboard, on the whiteboard. There is a syllable missing in the second word of the second line. Brahma, it should be Naraharim, Harim. There it says Naharim. Naharim, no, he is Harim. Naharim means no Harim. No, he is Harim, but he is Naraharim. And that's also very beautiful. I think it's called Yamaka in the Sanskrit poetry, when you repeat the same syllables over and again, and they produce a special meaning. Kavi Karnapur, the greatest of Gaudiya-Vaishnava poets, maybe the greatest of all poets of all time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu blessed him with his special potency of composing wonderful verses, wonderful poetry, and he also composed a textbook on Sanskrit poetry called Alankara Kaustuba. And there he creates his own amazing, beautiful examples of Sanskrit poetry. And one of them just comes to my mind, and he says, Aho ahobir na kalir viduyate, that please do not, aho ahobir, do not fear the age of Kali. Aho ahobir na kalir viduyate. Kali will not torture you. It will not cause you any disturbance. Aho ahobir, it's yamaka. Yamaka means you repeat the same word again, but it means different things. Aho means oh. Oh. Exclamation of surprise. Ahobir, by its days, the age of Kali, or by its nights, it won't torture you. Ahobir na kalir viduyate. Suda, sudara. I forgot actually. But anyway, it goes on. Explain using different words as an alliteration to glorify Krishna. He says, if you chant the names of Krishna, who is the son of Yasho, Yashoda Tanayasya Giyate. If you chant the names of Krishna, the son of Yashoda, Yasho, Yashoda Tanayasya Giyate, then the age of Kali won't torture you. So in this verse also we have that Yamaka, Brahma Nara Harim Harim. So we'll read the verse together with this short introduction. If you could kindly bear in mind that there is one syllable missing in the second line. Prasada sumukham drishtva. Prasada sumukham drishtva. Brahmanara harim harim. Brahmanara harim harim. Stutva vagbhir. Yes, Stutva vagbhir pavitrabhir. Stutva vagbhir pavitrabhir. Prahadivadibhir vritaha. Prahadivadibhir vritaha. Prasada sumukham drishtva. Brahmanara harim harim. Stutva vagbhir pavitrabhir. Prahadivadibhir vritaha. Please.
Prasada sumukham drishtva. Prasada sumukham drishtva. Brahmanara harim harim. Brahmanara harim harim. Stutva vagbhir pavitrabhir. Stutva vagbhir pavitrabhir. Prahadivadibhir vritaha. Prahadivadibhir vritaha.
Sumukham drishtva. Harim harim. Stutva vagbhir pavitrabhir. Prahadivadibhir vritaha. Vaishnavis, please. Prasada sumukham drishtva. Brahmanara harim harim. Vagbhir pavitrabhir. Prahadivadibhir vritaha. Prasada sumukham drishtva. Brahmanara harim harim. Vagbhir pavitrabhir. Prahadivadibhir vritaha. Word for word. Prasada sumukham. Whose face was bright because the Supreme Lord was pleased. Drishtva. Seeing this situation. Brahma. Lord Brahma. Naraharim. Unto Lord Nrsimhadev. Harim. the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Stutva, offering prayers. Vagdbihi, by transcendental words. Pavitrabihi, without any material contamination. Praha, addressed the Lord. Deva Adibihi, by other demigods. Vritaha, surrounded. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Lord Brahma, surrounded by the other demigods, was bright-faced because the Lord was pleased. Thus he offered prayers to the Lord with transcendental words. There is no purport to this verse, and the next purport is to, the closest purport is to verse 26, but if I could, with your permission, read one statement by Srila Prabhupada as a commentary with his own words to this verse. Lord Brahma in this verse is just about to offer prayers to the Lord with transcendental words. Vabhihi, pavitrabihi. Srila Prabhupada translates pavitrabihi as by the words that are without any material contamination. And in doing so, Lord Brahma was also very bright-faced. Srila Prabhupada explains, repeating the words of Prahlada Maharaj in early chapters, that whoever happens to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes naturally beautified by the presence of the Lord's transcendental pleasure. Prahlada Maharaja gives a very nice analogy. He says, just like a person who is standing in front of a mirror and decorates himself or herself, by looking in the mirror, the reflection in the mirror doesn't require to be decorated separately. It automatically reflects the change of condition of the face of the person standing in front of it. Similarly, Prahlada Maharaj says, and Srila Prabhupada oftentimes quotes that statement, whoever pleases the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes naturally beautified. Like Devaki, when she bore the Supreme Personality of Godhead in her heart, having received him from Vasudev, she became so beautiful that even Kamsa, Maharaj yesterday described in a very vivid and inspiring way the connection of Kamsa with Krishna and how Krishna dispatched of Kamsa. Interesting that it must be on purpose that Bhagavatam doesn't even dwell on Kamsa's death more than for 2 lines, not even complete shloka. The demons that Kamsa sent to Vrindavan were given very lengthy and detailed descriptions of their tussle with Krishna, how Krishna engaged with them and how he spent time with them and had a lot of fun with them, like with Dhanukasura, for instance. But Kamsa, Krishna just jumped on him, kicked him, and that was the end of Kamsa. So, but even Kamsa was able to see the beauty of Devaki when the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifested in her and in Vasudev. She became so bright, so effulgent that Kamsa understood, my end is near. And similarly, whoever happens to bear Krishna, carry Krishna in his or her heart, becomes a receptacle of his glories and his beauty, naturally. Even if ostensibly, from the superficial point of view, a person is not exactly a model of beauty, but they become very attractive. And that's what Prabhupada himself said oftentimes, referring to his disciples, look at how bright-faced they are. Everyone feels attracted by them. And of course, Srila Prabhupada himself was so effulgent, so bright, and so obviously surcharged with Krishna's presence that even gross materialists could not help but see that in him and became attracted. So that's one point here. Another point is Lord Brahma is describing and glorifying the Lord by choicest words, by words that are a source, they are a result of Krishna's being pleased. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his prayers to one of the verses in the 10th canto, he says, very interesting, he says, let the cows of my words be herded by Krishna. Mad Gavir Api Gopalach, let Lord Gopala herd the cows of my words. Let him own the cows of my words, so that herded by him, taken care of by him, they could give milk that would please the hearts of the devotees. That's how he explains. So what we have to do, we're trying to not say anything on our own behalf, trying to repeat the words of the previous acharyas, because those are the cows that Krishna has already herded, has already taken under his care and protection. And they give that milk that if we repeat it, drink it ourselves and repeat it as much as we can, like Sutta Goswami says, Yatha Dita Yatha Matihi. I'll tell you what I heard and how I understood it. It will please everyone, regardless of whether we're speaking on some very exalted topics, very simple topics. It doesn't even have anything to do with the actual, I shouldn't say that, but it doesn't have much to do with the actual content of what we say. As long as we are trying to repeat the words of the previous acharyas, Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, a great Pandit and scholar and devotee par excellence, who translated, along with Hridayananda Maharaj and Dravida Prabhu, the remainder of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was such a great scholar that he could quote, and he did quote, verses by heart from Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, commentaries of the acharyas. He knew them inside out. But he would sit in our classes sometimes. We had our school at Govardhan. He would sit in our classes with the expression on his face that betrayed his genuine inquisitiveness. I didn't understand how. He was sitting like that with open eyes, sometimes even an open mouth, listening to us mumbling and trying to say a few words in a coherent way. And then once he said the secret of his inquisitiveness, his interest, he said, even if somebody is trying to, in his class, her class, trying to say a few words and doesn't come out right and they're mumbling something, but if they manage to repeat at least something from Srila Prabhupada, some words by Srila Prabhupada, we, the listeners, should be in ecstasy. That was his style of listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. So Lord Brahma here is said to be offering to the Lord Vagbih Pavitrabihi, the words that actually originate from the spiritual world. And those words can glorify Krishna properly. Otherwise, Krishna cannot be glorified by any mundane sounds. They don't have the capacity to reach him. That means that material words and material mind, they fail to reach the Supreme Lord, and they come back ashamed of their inability to reach him. He remains unattainable by them. But only the words that come from the spiritual world can glorify Krishna and his devotees also. And for that we have evidence from Srila Prabhupada's own words. He says in the Nectar of Devotion, quoting and translating a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, the 7th canto, he says, quoting Narada Muni addressing King Yudhishthir, he says, "My dear king, it is very difficult to describe the character of Prahlad. He developed a natural attraction for Krishna, and then somehow Prabhupada put that in the translation, even though in a literal, I looked it up in a literal Sanskrit, it's not exactly there, but again, Prabhupada is a great poet, can extract hidden meanings from the words and present it for us. He says, and whatever I can explain, Narada Muni speaks about Prahlad, whatever I can explain about his Prahlada's character will simply be an arrangement of words. Just an arrangement of words. Nothing, just piling words up. Nothing, it won't even start to describe the glories of Prahlad. What can I say? His actual character is impossible to describe. This means that Narada himself admitted that the natural development of Prahlada's ecstatic love was by the grace of Lord Krishna. And this is the plight, the predicament of devotees. They want to glorify Krishna, but they also understand that no words they speak about him will be sufficient to describe him. But what can they do? In their desperation and their helpless desire to glorify Krishna, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur once was present at an assembly of scholars. He was invited to deliver a lecture, and in his presence Lakshmi Devi was glorified. Yesterday Devamrita Maharaj also spoke about the glories of Lakshmi Devi through the mouth of Parvati, because they're friends. And also they're inseparable in a sense, because Parvati is called Jagal Lakshmi. She is the Lakshmi of this material world. She's just like a reflection of Mahalakshmi of the spiritual world. So somebody started glorifying Lakshmi Devi in the presence of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and the witnesses recount how complexion of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's countenance, his face changed abruptly. He turned pink and he fainted. And he couldn't say a word. And then it was explained. I don't know who got that explanation, but it sounds very much proper to explain what happened to him, is that he wanted to glorify Srimati Radharani because she is by far superior to all Lakshmis put together. She is the source of them. He wanted to glorify Srimati Radharani, but at the same time he didn't want to glorify Srimati Radharani because it's so confidential, and those people who are there glorifying Lakshmi Devi didn't deserve to hear that glory. So these two emotions collided in him and caused that fainting. That's the only thing he could do. On another occasion, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur complained. He said, "We don't have enough words to even describe neither Bengali, nor Hindi, nor Sanskrit, nor English, which he knew so well that even the best scholars of his time couldn't follow his exposition on philosophy in English. He knew it like a walking encyclopedia, he was called. Like that. So on the one hand, they don't have enough words to describe Krishna, and Prabhupada even says in his commentaries that what can we do? It's not our native tongue, English, but we have to glorify Krishna. And he was praying in his Markine Bhagavata Dharma prayer, "Please, my Lord, you are the supreme mystic. You can enter my words. And by your presence in those words, you can make people devotees. That's my only hope and aspiration. But on the other hand, they couldn't help but glorify Krishna. So this is Lord Brahma, with bright face and with choicest words and transcendental words, he tries to glorify Prahlada Maharaj and Narasimhadev. So we're going to read the next verse, text 26. Actually, taking advantage of Narasimha Kavachi Prabhu, I wanted to ask his permission to continue, because he's like my teacher in many ways, a senior devotee, who I always look up to and take inspiration from, especially from his inspiration to read Srimad Bhagavatam. Every week he comes to Mukunda Maharaj at New Govardhan when he's there and reads Srimad Bhagavatam with Mukunda Maharaj, going over so many fine and minute and deep details of philosophy and rasa. So text 26. Shri Brahmo Vacha Deva Deva Kila. Excuse me. I think I'm at the point when I start needing eyeglasses, but I'm ashamed to admit that. No, it's okay. I think I can manage. Deva Deva Kila Dhyaksha Bhuta Bhavana Parvatja Dishtyate Nihatach Papo Loka Santapano Suraha. Translation. Lord Brahma said, the Supreme Lord of all Lords, proprietor of the entire universe, benedictor of all living entities, original person, Adipurusha, because of our good fortune, you have now killed the sinful demon who was giving trouble to the entire universe. Purport. The word Purvaja is described in Bhagavad Gita 10:8. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate. All the demigods, including Lord Brahma, are manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the original person, the cause of all causes, is Govinda, the Adipurusham. Again, a few words on this purport by Srila Prabhupada. is that there are different Vaishnava schools, and they have a different perspective on the Taratamya, or the hierarchy of Vaishnavas and their greatness. One particular school, founded by Shripad Madhvacharya, puts demigods on top of the hierarchy. They are the best servants of Krishna. Therefore, Madhvacharya quotes in one of the verses on this chapter a statement from a Purana which says that Prahlada is the best of all devotees except Narada Muni and the demigods. So, yeah, from one sense, from the administrative point of view, this is correct, because it's the demigod's responsibility to arrange for this material world which can simultaneously fulfill the living entities' desires, aspirations, but in such a way that they gradually and inevitably come to frustration and start turning their faces towards devotional service. So it's the demigod's responsibility, and also many of them are exalted devotees. Like Lord Brahma is the head of the list of our Mahajanas, Swayambur, Narada, Shambur. And Prabhupada says in one lecture that the list is arranged in the order of decreasing greatness, if you could compare devotees. So Brahma is on top as the head of the Sampradaya and the head of the universe. But on the other hand, we have an alternative list of devotees and their greatness. And that list, the alternative list, is of course described in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and it's the gopis who top it. And among the gopis is Srimati Radharani. But when Narada Muni has gone through all of them, trying to search for the best receptacle, the highest receptacle, Krishna's mercy, and he comes to Krishna in Dwaraka a little bit bewildered. And he said, Krishna, I cannot understand. So who is the greatest of all the devotees? Because they're all pointing fingers at each other. Wherever you go and glorify, like Prahlada Maharaj, yesterday Devamrita Maharaj wonderfully described how Narada Muni came running to Prahlada Maharaj, and he disregarded, or maybe forgotten his ecstasy, the warning of Lord Shiva that please do not try to glorify Prahlad, he doesn't like it. Oh, he is the spiritual master. The spiritual master is allowed to do anything with his disciple, even glorify him if he wants. Even though Srila Prabhupada says in one, actually many times he quoted the statement by Chanakya Pandit. How does it go? Lalana bhavo dosha, tadana bhavo gunaha. If you chastise a subordinate, it will give rise to many good qualities, like a son and a disciple. But if you pamper or flatter, Prabhupada said, flatter him, then it will give rise to many bad qualities, because he will feel proud. And it's the duty of the spiritual master to chastise his disciples. So from the ordeal of chastisement, his good qualities will manifest, headed by humility. The spiritual master is supposed to make his disciple humble. So Prabhupada said, this is very intelligent to feel foolish in front of the spiritual master. This is the most intelligent thing to do. Feel completely foolish. Lord Chaitanya called himself a fool in front of the spiritual master, quoting his Guru Maharaj's words. I don't actually know if he said that, but Lord Chaitanya said he said. So, Ishvarapuri, did he call Lord Chaitanya a fool actually when he said, you are a fool, you cannot touch Vedanta Sutra? Well, Lord Chaitanya said he had said that, so we quote his example, his words. And because of that, he told me, you are not allowed to touch Vedanta, just chant Hare Krishna. Interesting. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Vedanta Krit Vedaveteva Chaham. He is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, who is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. He is the knower of the Vedas. And the spiritual master tells him not to touch the Vedanta Sutra because he was too foolish for that. Okay, Lord Chaitanya said, what can I do? He told me to chant Hare Krishna, that's what I'm doing. He told Prakashananda Saraswati Thakur. But when it came time for them to discuss Vedanta Sutra, he manifested a perfect understanding of Vedanta Sutra. Everyone was put to shame and also became very much inspired by how clear and by how natural and how consistent and deep and inspiring and transcendental his exposition on the Vedanta Sutra was. This is the result of following the instructions of the spiritual master. So Srila Prabhupada said that, and one devotee, I think it was Jayadvaita Prabhu at that time, I may be mistaken, but he was definitely there in that discussion. Somebody asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, continuing the same logic, a disciple becomes perfect only when he or she is chastised by the spiritual master. Were you chastised by your spiritual master? It's a very bold question to ask. Prabhupada could have said, none of your business. But he didn't say that. He said, oh yes. And that's the expression he used, oh yes. It's very precious, it's very valuable for me. I still remember how he chastised me in his class. Actually, I started talking to someone in the class because somebody asked me a question. It was a big sponsor of the Gaudiya-math. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur immediately cut us off. He told that devotee who distracted me, who are you? Do you think you have purchased me with your 200 rupees a month, or whatever he was paying? That now you can do anything in my class, you've purchased me, and now you can just speak? And then he turned to Prabhupada and said, do you want to sit here and talk? If people asking you questions in the audience, instead of me, you can just sit in my place, like that. And Prabhupada says, this is very valuable. I still remember that and cherish it in my heart. So, yes, so they were all pointing fingers at each other. And Narada Muni came to Krishna and he was completely bewildered. And he said, so who is the spiritual greatest devotee, receptacle of your mercy? And Krishna told him, smilingly, he said, Narada, you haven't understood. Even though you went through all of them and glorified them and spoke with them, all of them are the best receptacles of our mercy. Each and every one of their special way. Because bhakti is so perfect that at every stage of bhakti, from Shraddha to Prema, it's complete and perfect. And Srila Prabhupada compares it in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam to the development of a mango fruit. Mango is a mango. Genetically, it's the same fruit, regardless of its stage of development. Now in New Govardhan we have that mango orchard. A lot of mangoes are coming on the branches of the trees, and around February, January, February they come. They become completely ripe. So mango is a mango. In the same way, bhakti is bhakti. It might taste sour while in the material world. It will taste sweeter in the spiritual world, but it's the same fruit at different stages of development, the same as bhakti. So that's what Prabhupada explains in the purport, that all the demigods, including Lord Brahma, are manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his instruments. And therefore, Krishna is attractive to them in a very special way. Each and every devotee has the ability to highlight or manifest a particular trait of Krishna, inspiring for their group, for their class of devotees. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter, there is a verse which describes Krishna's return to Dvaraka, and it says, Yashurach Padam Shriyo Nivaso Yashurach Panapatram Mukham Drisham Bhahavo Lokapalanam Saranganam Padambujam. That verse says that different features of Krishna were attractive for different kinds of devotees. Those who, with an artistic sense, there are people aesthetically inclined and they like to see beautiful things or create them and appreciate them. They are attracted by Krishna's face, because Krishna's face, with his charming smile and his beautiful earrings that are swinging to and fro, with his curly hair, and his restless eyes, they're the pinnacle, the epitome of beauty. Then those who are inspired to take shelter of Lakshmi Devi are meditating on Krishna's chest, because that's where she takes her residence, permanent residence. Her permanent residency permit is there on the chest of Krishna, as the curly hair, the golden hair, curl of golden hair on his chest. And the demigods are mentioned here, Lokanam Bhavaloka Palanam, they're meditating on Krishna's strong arms that carry different weapons. And probably Krishna doesn't wash his weapons that were used for killing demons, so the stains of blood on his Kaumadaki club inspire and reassure demigods that don't you worry, I'll deal with the demons. You don't have to be in anxiety. Sometimes devotees, demigods do get in anxiety, and they are trying to, Krishna creates a drama of playing like with Varahadev, and he appeared to be almost losing to Hiranyaksha. And the demigods were all freaking out. Kill him, don't play with him, just what are you doing? And then at the most intense moment, Lord Varahadev drops his club out of his hand, I guess. Right? So, and the demigods go, oh, we're going to be finished now. Like that. So Krishna creates this kind of drama, and he uses the club to reassure the demigods, don't you worry, I'll take care of you. But the most, how do you say that? The most perceptive devotees, the most introspective devotees, they're described by the word saranga. Saranga means those who know where the essence is and they go for that essence. Just like the bees, they go to the whirl of the lotus flower. They don't waste time crawling around the petals or the leaves. Just go to the whirl, the essence. In the world, they take the nectar out. So the devotees are like that. Those who know the essence seekers, sarangas, they seek the essence, and they also, saranga means those who glorify the essence. They speak only about Krishna, the essence of all existence, the one who gives everything flavor, and everything is maintained by him. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna is compared to the fibers of a lotus stalk. You have the lotus flower that grows out of the depth of a pond from the mud, and then it penetrates the water and then surfaces, and then actually goes above the surface of the water and then blooms. And Krishna is compared to the fibers within that stalk. It's interesting, I looked up recently, they actually manufacture cloth. Do you know that? From the stalk, it's called lotus silk. Completely ahimsa, completely vegan and vegetarian. Very expensive. They take those stalks apart, they collect the fibers and weave them into threads and then weave them into cloth. Like that. So Krishna is that kind of essence of the entire existence. And the devotees, they know the essence, they go for it and then sing about it. And Prabhupada explains why. Why they don't spend time, why they don't become attracted to Krishna's face, or Krishna's hands, or Krishna's chest. Because all of Krishna's parts are completely beautiful and able to attract the mind of whoever looks at them. They're indispensable, they're, exchangeable. That's what I want to say. And that's what the gopis feel sometimes wherever they look at Krishna's eyes or at Krishna's hands or his palms or his chest or his navel, they become stuck. They cannot take their eyes off that part of Krishna's body. So why do devotees, sarangas, they go to the feet? Prabhupada explains. Because they're very clever. Krishna in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam says that devotees are so clever. They're very clever. They take their temporary, miserable material life, they offer it to me in devotional service, and in exchange for that miserable material life, unpredictably short, they get an eternal life full of bliss and knowledge in the spiritual world. What a beautiful trade-in, right? There is a trade-in scheme. You take your old phone, turn it in and get, $20 or $50 towards the new phone. But devotees are very smart. They take their miserable, short material life. They think it's miserable. Actually, it's not miserable. And then give it to Krishna in devotional service. And in exchange for that, immediately they get the eternal life full of bliss and knowledge, even in this world. Like that. So devotees, when they worship Krishna's feet, Prabhupada explains, they get everything. Because when they take shelter of Krishna's feet, you can try yourself. If you ambush a devotee and catch his or her lotus feet by bowing down on the floor, then the first thing the devotee will do is, what will he do, or she? They'll look down upon you. First, who is that? Then they will bow down, they'll grab you by the hands and lift you from the floor and embrace you by pressing you against their chests. So you'll get all four in one go. The feet, the chest, the hands, and the smiling face of Krishna, like that. So the demigods are the best devotees in the material world, but devotees like Prahlada Maharaj and the gopis do not belong to the material world. That's why they're on a separate list of hierarchy. Text 27. Yasa labdva varo mato navadyo mama shrutibihi tapo yoga balonadhah samasta nigaman ahan. Translation: the demon Hiranyakashipu received from me the benediction that he would not be killed by any living being within my creation. With this assurance and with strength derived from austerities and mystic power, he became excessively proud and transgressed all the Vedic injunctions. Text 28. Dishtya tanayah sadhur maha bhagavator bakaha tvaya vimochito mrityor dishtya tvam samito dhuna. Translation: by great fortune, Hiranyakashipu's son Praharaja Prahlada has now been released from death. For although he is a child, he is an exalted devotee. Now he is fully under the protection of your lotus feet. And the last verse we read today is the 29th verse with Srila Prabhupada's commentary on it. Etad vapuste bhagavan dhyayatah paramatmanaha sarvato gop... Excuse me. Sarvato goptri sa... I cannot read it. Sarvato gopir sa... Asantrasat, okay. Sarvato gopti santrasan brityor api jigram sataha. Translation: my dear Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are the Supreme Soul. If one meditates upon your transcendental body, you naturally protect him from all sources of fear, even the imminent danger of death. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Everyone is sure to die, for no one is excused from the hands of death, which is but a feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mrityu Sarva Harashchaham. When one becomes a devotee, however, he is not destined to die according to a limited duration of life. Everyone has a limited duration of life, but a devotee's lifetime can be extended by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, who is able to nullify the results of one's karma. Karmani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. This is the statement of Brahma Samhita 5:54. A devotee is not under the laws of karma, therefore even a devotee's scheduled death can be avoided by the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. God protects the devotee even from the extreme danger of death. Actually, our time is almost over, and there are so many things to say in the last verse and purport by Srila Prabhupada about how the Lord protects his devotees. But maybe there are some comments or questions on what we have already read or discussed so far. And maybe something will surface in your discussion, if there are any questions or comments, that will also give us an excuse to touch on this topic as well. Darsima Kavacha, do you have any comments to add? Yes, please. Do you have a microphone?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the nice class. Prabhu, you mentioned that we cannot approach the Lord with our material senses. But we see when we're doing the services in the temple, we're mostly using the body, like when we're cleaning, we're using our hands to broom the floor. So how do we understand this?
Thank you for the question. The question is, it was mentioned that we cannot serve the Lord with material senses. And so how do we actually serve in the temple when all we have is our material senses? They appear to be material. The senses, the mind and the body, karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, they appear to be material, but when we engage them in Krishna's service by the instructions and inspiration from devotees, they become spiritualized. On the level of sadhana, that's all we have. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhavasa sadhana bida nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. Sadhana bhakti is what we're engaged in, is characterized by us using the material senses in the service of Krishna on the instruction, on the order of the spiritual master and devotees, and by doing so we become purified and spiritualized, and the senses become qualified, purified enough for Krishna to accept them as spiritual enough. spiritual enough. And this is what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself says in his discussions with Haridas Thakur and Sanatana Goswami. He says, Diksha Kali Bhakta Kare Atma Samarpan Se Kali Krishna Kare Tari Atmasam. At the point of initiation, when devotee offers himself or herself completely to Krishna's service, Atma Samarpan, in exchange for that, again, speaking of trading, you offer yourself to Krishna's service, and Krishna in exchange offers himself to the devotee, or specifically Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, he makes the devotee equal to himself in terms of his or her ability to serve on a spiritual platform. The example that Srila Prabhupada sometimes gave, a very nice example, I'm sure Nasima Kavachi Prabhu uses this example in his classes on courses on deity worship, as the post box. Prabhupada said, of small child, he wants to, when children, they grow, they want to imitate adults, and they also want to do things that adults can do with their height and their strength. So a child walks up to the post box and he wants to drop, or she wants to drop a letter into the post box. But it's too high. She cannot reach yet. Maybe you are able to reach already because you've grown up enough. But if the girl is too small, then the parent, the mother or the father, they pick her up from behind and lift her. So then she can put the letter in the box. In the same way, the instructions of the spiritual master elevate our material, so-called material senses, to the level in which they are spiritual enough to serve Krishna. And Krishna accepts that service rendered by so-called material senses of a devotee is completely spiritual. Now, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions in this verse Diksha Kali, the point of Diksha. So what do we do if we haven't gotten Diksha? Srila Prabhupada explains that Diksha is not, of course, it happens officially at the point of initiation, the ceremony, when we take our vows and we receive our spiritual name, we take the beads. But Prabhupada explains that actual Diksha happens when we have become determined to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. That's the actual Diksha. And then the ceremony follows as a formalization of that commitment. So, to put it briefly, we continue serving doing what devotees tell us to do, and that's spiritual. Is it okay? Nasima Kavachi, maybe you have something to add to that? Again, it's your realm. It's your realm. How do we worship the deities? Nadeva Deva Marchayat. We cannot worship the Lord without being godly ourselves. And that's how we do it. Devotees give us Shraddha, faith in Krishna. And that Shraddha purifies us. Stoka Krishna Prabhu. If we have enough time, I don't know when we're supposed to end. At 8:30, right? So we have 1 more minute. Actually, I wanted to conclude after Stoka Krishna Prabhu asks his question. If I have anything to say in response, I have one quote which I wanted to conclude this discussion with, because we didn't have time for all we wanted to say. I'll just conclude with that statement after you. Pardon me? Go to 9. Really? No, I think it's 8:30.
Is it?
Anyhow. Please, Stoka Krishna.
You've got plenty of time. All right, so my question is about the last purport that you read, and that is, Srila Prabhupada makes a point that the Supreme Lord protects the devotee from the imminent danger of death. And he makes almost a blank statement here saying, God protects the devotee even from the extreme danger of death. And that seems to apply to, in every case, in every circumstance. But at the beginning of this purport, Srila Prabhupada says, everyone is sure to die, for no one is excused from the hands of death. So, in what circumstances does the Lord protect his devotees from that danger? Because we have seen in our practical lives now, in the current lives, even in the current situations, that some devotees have been killed in what seems to be unfortunate circumstances, and they, it seems as if they were not protected. So, what is the qualification, I guess, to be protected by the Lord in that way, and what is also the significance of being protected from the death of the temporary material body, because that is sure to die anyway.
Well, thank you. It's a very profound question. And it's a good catch. Prabhupada says everyone is sure to die, and devotees do die. They only also die, even in the Bhagavatam, they die not just of natural causes, like they say recently, the Secretary of State of the United States died at age of 100, of natural causes, they say. It's always unnatural. I mean, it's natural for the body to be dead anyhow, so for the body it's unnatural to be alive. It goes back to its natural state of being dead matter. But it's interesting how Krishna himself says, Kauntiya pratijani hinami bhakta pranashyati, please declare it boldly, Arjuna, that my devotees will never perish. But devotees do die. How do we resolve these two seemingly incompatible statements? Because Krishna has a different definition of death. It's for us, since in our eyes, death is the separation of the soul from the body. That's how we define death. Not even just from the body, from the gross body, because the soul doesn't get separated from the subtle body so easily. It keeps on lingering and retaining and carrying the impressions lifetime after lifetime. So it's a very kind of superficial death. But Krishna doesn't define death like that. If he did define death like separation of the soul from the body, it would have been a curse for a devotee. Can you imagine? It says, okay, my devotees will never separate from the material body. They will always stay in that body, no matter how old and useless it is. It's a curse. It's not a blessing. It's a curse. Right? So what Krishna defines, because his life, Krishna's life, Krishna Mata, Krishna Pita, Krishna Dhana Pran, he's the life source of all living entities. And when he says, please declare it boldly that the devotee will never perish, he means that he will not separate from me. I'm his life. He will not die from me. He will always be with me. And even when started, and that point of, it's interesting, speaking about protection, because Brahma speaks about protection here. Srila Prabhupada writes in the commentary on the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that the protection that Stoka Krishna Prabhu is asking about is offered to the devotee from the very first moments he or she starts their sojourn, their practice of devotional service. The very first steps. And when do those steps happen? Do they happen when we start chanting Hare Krishna? Do they happen when we start reading the books or take prasadam? No. Even before that. Muchukunda says, as soon as a devotee enters our life, even unknown to us, maybe we were traveling by a tram and a devotee was standing next to us, that geographical proximity of a devotee is sufficient to start orienting us towards devotional service. He says, as soon as devotees enter our life, when they come to us, liberation comes with them. You're already liberated. So from that point of view, Prabhupada's purport is very, how would I say that? I don't want to say, I use the word tricky, but it's, what's the best word to describe? Poetic. Okay. He says that a devotee might have his or her fixed duration of life, but Krishna can arrange it in different ways. He can extend it, I should say, both ways. He can extend it towards an extension of his lifetime in this world, but he can extend it the other way. He can shorten it for other people to see, but he can extend it by bringing the devotee faster to the spiritual world, extending his stay in the spiritual world because of his eagerness, out of his eagerness to get his devotee to come to him faster. This is not my statement. This is a statement of Baladev Vidyabhushan in Govinda Bhasham. He says that the Lord becomes so eager to get his devotee back to the spiritual world as soon as possible that he arranges in the life of his devotee things that might appear to be unfortunate accidents or disease or some other and there are reasons for that also, besides his eagerness to get his devotee faster to him. He also creates a sort of smoke screen, so the insincere people who do not have spiritual motives and devotional service. Don't become too eager to serve him for material purposes. Oh, if we saw that all devotees would live up to 108 years, everyone, then a lot of insincere people would join just for that longevity. That's why Krishna arranges for some causes for his devotees' deaths. Devotees have to die of something. It would be very scary, very frightening if devotees would just die of nothing. Just for no reason, just dropping dead. And that's how Baladev Vidyabhushan explains. That Krishna, out of his eagerness, he breaks into his devotee's life and takes him back to the spiritual world. When Krishna recognizes the service of his devotee. And that gives me a very nice lead to the verse, to the quote I wanted to conclude with. Thank you so much, Stoka Krishna Prabhu. And this statement is in Prabhupada's letter to one devotee. I won't tell you the name of the devotee. I'll ask you who you think the devotee is. Okay? And if some of you know who the devotee is, please don't tell. Okay, the others. Prabhupada writes in his letter to that devotee in 1968. Where is that? Here, yeah. So he writes, on the 1st of June 1968, he writes to that devotee, "So I wish that you will live for 100 years and execute this movement, Krishna movement, so that in this very life you shall enter into the abode of Krishna. As soon as one's service is recognized by Krishna, he is immediately called, 'Please come here.' That's the verdict of the Vedic literature. So we should work in such a nice way that we can draw the attention of Krishna to call us. You will find in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who takes the task of preaching Krishna consciousness is the dearmost devotee of the Lord." Yesterday, Devamrita Maharaj quoted that verse. Chatasman manusheshu kashtin me priyatit kritamaham. So Prabhupada says here, I wish you to live 100 years, and we know that Krishna fulfills the desires of his pure devotees. But then he says, as soon as Krishna recognizes his devotees' service, he immediately calls, "Come back, come here, come to me, please." Who do you think that devotee is that Prabhupada wrote that letter in 1969? Come on, Krishna, Narasimha Kavachi Prabhu knows. Tamal Krishna Maharaj. It was Tamal Krishna Maharaj who received that letter for his wonderful preaching. At that time, I don't know if he was already initiated, but he hadn't become yet a prominent leader of the movement. And Prabhupada told him, "Okay, I wish that you live for 100 years. How long did Tamal Krishna Maharaj live for? 52, 53, I think. He passed away in an apparently unfortunate car accident. But that's how Prabhupada explains. He says, as soon as Krishna recognizes a devotee, he says, "Come here." And as far as we started with describing Lord Brahma's bright face, Narasimha Kavachi Prabhu was there in Mayapur in 2002, and so was I. I saw Tamal Krishna Maharaj very few times in my life. First time I saw him in person was 1998 in Vrindavan, and then I saw him in Mayapur 2002 when he passed away. And now, in retrospect, I understand how these things kind of fall in place. They all are pieced together. The only thing Tamal Krishna Maharaj did at that time in Mayapur, it was his first return after many years. How many years he hadn't come to Mayapur? For at least 10 years, I guess, right? He brought a group of Chinese devotees with him the first time, and he offered them to Srila Prabhupada in his room, just like you have Prabhupada's room here in Mayapur. He offered them all to Srila Prabhupada, because Prabhupada told him, "You go to China and preach. That's your assignment." Took him a lot of efforts, a lot of hard labor, a lot of intelligence. And he brought this group of Chinese devotees to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet in Mayapur, offered them. And then the only thing he did in Mayapur, except attending the GBC meetings, was chanting Krishna's name, not even chanting himself. He would call his godbrothers famous for kirtans, like Niranjana Swami, Arjuna Maharaj, Govinda Maharaj, Shivaram Swami. And they were in his room in the conch building. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was just there enjoying, relishing the holy name, swinging back and forth, to and fro like that, side to side. I was told, I wasn't there. I was foolish. I was too foolish to go there because I had too many things to do. And I was staying in the lotus building across the courtyard, and I could see the crowd. I said, okay, maybe tomorrow I'll go. But I was told by those who were there in that kirtan that Tamal Krishna Maharaj was just sitting there with closed eyes, relishing the kirtan. And the other thing I remember very vividly, when I went to the Ganges, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj alone by himself was swimming in the Ganges with a bright face. His face was glowing, like with effulgence. There was a sense of that quiet bliss around him, palpable. You could feel it. That's the last image of Tamal Krishna Maharaj is in my mind. And then at Mangalarati we heard the news. His car hit the tree. His driver apparently fell asleep at the wheel, and he passed away immediately, instantaneously. That's the external, apparent, the smoke screen that Krishna created. Huh? And the actual content, the actual purpose of that is described here by Prabhupada in his letter. As soon as Krishna recognizes his service, come here, and I'll speed things up for you. So Krishna can extend the devotee's life, the span of his or her life, both ways. Whether it's longer or shorter, regardless, he will come to the spiritual world the quickest path possible. And the devotees help us in that by giving us instructions and inspiration. Thank you so much for your kind attention. I have nothing else to say. Even what I have already said, I shouldn't have said, I guess, because I should have listened to some of you, but I wasn't given that option, so please forgive me. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantha Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaura Premanande.